Jacob Fatu confronts Solo Sikoa backstage after U.S. title cage fight. Jacob Fatu confronts Solo Sikoa in a backstage showdown you won't believe. Tensions explode after the brutal United States title cage match as family loyalty is tested in ways no one saw coming. I end this dramatic backstage segment following the high-stakes U.S. title cage fight. Jacob Fatu finally comes face-to-face with Solo Sikoa. What starts as a confrontation turns into a powerful moment that could shift the entire dynamic of the bloodline. Will they fight? Will they unite? Or will chaos reign? Jacob Fatu had been waiting in the shadows for weeks, silently watching, silently burning. The echoes of the steel cage slamming shut behind Solo Sikoa just moments earlier still hung in the air, thick with the kind of electricity that only a fight soaked in legacy and blood could deliver. The United States title had been the prize, but everyone knew it was never just about the gold. It was about dominance, respect, control. And somewhere far deeper, it was about betrayal, pride, and a family legacy that was unraveling thread by thread. Backstage, the locker room area was a war zone of whispers. Crew members glanced nervously at the hallway as Jacob Fatu's unmistakable figure cut through the air like a blade. His eyes were locked in a silent fury, body moving like a predator zeroing in on its target. No camera crew followed him at first, no need. The tension in the air alone was broadcast-worthy. He wasn't dressed for war, but he didn't need to be. The war was already inside him. Every tattoo inked on his skin, every scar carried from years in the trenches of wrestling wars, now led him to one destination: Solo Sikoa. Solo sat alone on a black bench in the concrete hallway, his chest still rising and falling from the brutal cage match he had just survived. Sweat dripped from his temple, blood from his lip, and pride from his silence. He clutched the United States Championship against his knee like it was the only thing left tethering him to sanity. He hadn't seen Jacob yet, but maybe he had felt him coming. There's something eerie about sensing the presence of a man you share blood with, especially when that blood is now boiling with questions, regret, and restrained fury. The moment Jacob stepped into view, the air seemed to change. Cooler. Denser. As if the backstage walls were bracing themselves for what was to come, Solo lifted his head. He didn't stand up. He didn't blink, and Jacob didn't speak. Not at first. They stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. No words. Just silence. The kind of silence that screams. The kind of silence that knows history. You think this is what the family wanted? Jacob finally said, his voice low, gravelly, restrained, but lethal. You think this belt is worth tearing it all apart? Solo's eyes narrowed, but he didn't answer. He just wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his taped hand and leaned forward. Jacob took a slow step closer. His presence swallowed the hallway. I watched you out there. Cage match. Steel. Chairs. Fists. You brought everything except honor. Solo finally stood. And when he did, the tension hit its peak. These weren't two men in a title feud. These were two warriors of the same bloodline, same tribe, same ancestral warpath, now standing on opposite sides of an invisible battlefield. You weren't out there, Solo said coldly. So don't come in here and talk about honor like you know what it costs. Jacob stepped forward again, now toe-to-toe. I know exactly what it costs. I've paid more than you. I've watched this family rot from the inside while you parade around with that belt like it means you're the king. You ain't the king, Solo. You're the crack in the crown. The silence afterward was heavier than anything either could lift. The two stared into each other's eyes, two titans molded from the same DNA, but carved by completely different worlds. Solo didn't move. But his lip twitched. You want to fight me, Jacob? Or are you just here to talk about loyalty? Jacob didn't flinch. I don't want to fight you, Solo. I want you to remember who you are. Before this title. Before this ego. Before the silence between us got louder than the war. Somewhere behind them, a camera operator had finally arrived. The moment was too raw, too dangerous, too magnetic to ignore. The red light flicked on. WWE officials didn't stop it. This was the kind of chaos they quietly fed on. Real emotion. Real heat. The kind that didn't need a script. Solo's jaw tensed. You came here to make peace? Jacob chuckled, a dark, hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. No. I came here to look you in the eye before I make a decision. Solo raised an eyebrow, his fingers slowly tightening on the title still clutched in his left hand. What decision? That if you keep walking this path, Jacob whispered, I'll be the one waiting at the end of it. The chill that ran down the spine of anyone watching wasn't from the air conditioning. It was from the truth. The threat didn't come with yelling or finger-pointing or grandstanding. It came in the way Jacob said it, like a promise. Not of vengeance, but of inevitability. You think Roman's coming back to fix all this? Solo asked suddenly, breaking the stillness. You think the tribal chief is gonna show up, point his finger, and everything's back the way it was? Jacob's jaw clenched. He's not coming, Solo spat. You think I wanted this? I became what I had to become. Nobody else was strong enough to keep the name alive. Strong. Jacob stepped even closer, their chests almost touching. You call this strength? Dividing us? Humiliating your brothers? Holding belts like their blood? You lost your soul the minute you put yourself above the family. Solo's face twitched. But he didn't reply. I've buried more brothers than you fought, Jacob added, voice shaking now not with fear, but with weight. And I'm not gonna bury another one just to let your ego live. A long silence passed. Too long. One where anything could have happened. A headbutt. A shove. A punch. But instead, something more cutting arrived. Solo Sikoa looked down at the United States title. Then slowly, almost without realizing it, he dropped it to the floor. Jacob's eyes narrowed. Solo leaned in. You think you're better than me? Step up, USO. Let's see what your loyalty really looks like. And then he walked away, just like that. No more words. No more stares. The moment had reached its apex. And now the fallout had begun. Jacob stood there alone now, staring down at the United States title on the cold concrete floor. The same belt that had driven so much chaos. So much division. He didn't pick it up. He didn't even look at the camera now zooming in on his face. He just turned and walked the other way. The shot lingered, and in that lingering frame, every WWE fan watching understood something big had just shifted. This wasn't just another backstage promo. This was the beginning of a civil war. A war of legacy. Of leadership. Of blood. Of brothers. And the world would never be the same again. The echoes of that backstage encounter didn't die down in the WWE universe. They spread like wildfire. In locker rooms, on social media, even in the halls of corporate WWE offices, the question had been ignited. Was this the moment the bloodline finally fractured beyond repair? Jacob Fatu wasn't seen for the rest of that night. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't appear in the post-show media scrum. And yet, he didn't have to. That silent departure, that moment where he chose not to pick up the title Solo left behind, spoke louder than any microphone ever could. Meanwhile, Solo Sikoa disappeared into the shadows of the arena like a ghost. No one could reach him. Not Heyman. Not Jimmy. Not even the officials tasked with keeping order backstage. It was as if he had vanished into the cracks of his own chaos. But what no one realized yet was that this wasn't an ending, it was a warning. Something had broken in Solo that night. Or perhaps, something had finally been revealed. 3 days later, WWE.com released an official teaser, Jacob Fatu to speak on SmackDown. The post didn't include a quote. No backstage footage. No spoilers. Just a still image, Jacob, staring down the hallway where Solo had vanished. The internet erupted. Reddit threads, Twitter/X debates, and wrestling podcasts spun wild theories. Was Jacob challenging Solo? Was he aligning with him? Was this the dawn of a new Fatu dynasty? Or was war finally upon the family? SmackDown came. The arena was electric. The lighting was dimmer than usual when Jacob's music hit. Not a roar of celebration, but a deep, anxious energy filled the crowd. They knew something was different now. And Jacob Fatu, shirtless, wrapped in Samoan beads and traditional war tattoos exposed, stepped out into the ring with a steel mic and the look of a man who'd carried weight too long. He stood in the center of the ring for a full 30 seconds before speaking. The camera didn't cut. The crowd didn't chant. It was reverence. It was fear. I didn't come here to play wrestler, Jacob began, voice low. I didn't come here for merch sales, catchphrases, or main event slots. I came here for one reason, my family. The crowd began murmuring, and what I've seen over the last year, what I've watched Solo become, it's not just disappointing, it's disgraceful. He paused. I watched that boy grow up. I trained with him. I bled with him. And I loved him like my own blood. Because he is. But love without truth? That's just silence. And I won't stay silent anymore. Fans began to stir. Chants of Fatu. Fatu broke out across the arena. Solo Sikoa, Jacob said with venom now rising in his voice, you've been walking around here like you built this legacy. Like you are the reason the bloodline matters. But boy, you were handed everything. While I was out there fighting wars, earning respect the hard way, you were hiding behind Roman's shadow, letting Paul Heyman feed you scraps and call it royalty. His pacing now became sharper. His voice louder. You beat down Jimmy. You humiliated Jay. You took a title that doesn't even belong to our lineage and raised it like it was tribal gold. And worst of all, you forgot who your real family is. The camera cut to the backstage locker room. Solo Sikoa was watching on a monitor. Expressionless. Still. But his hands, his fists were clenched. Jacob looked directly into the hard camera now. So here it is. Next week. No titles. No managers. No weapons. Just you and me. Face to face. Truth versus power. Let's see if your pride can survive your past. The challenge had been made. Not for gold, not for glory, but for something far more personal. Redemption. Reckoning. That night, the official WWE YouTube channel uploaded the promo. Within 24 hours, it had over 8 million views. Every major sports outlet from ESPN to Bleacher Report covered the upcoming segment. This wasn't just storyline now. This was being treated like a family implosion televised for the world. Backstage, whispers swirled. Some wrestlers said they were afraid to even be near the confrontation. Others believed this was exactly what WWE needed, a reset. A war to burn away the confusion and birth a new dynasty. Roman Reigns' name came up again and again. Was he watching? Would he return? Would he pick a side? The following week arrived. The arena was sold out. Social media was on fire. Jacob Fatu was already in the ring. No music. No pyro. Just there, waiting, and then it happened. Solo's entrance theme hit, and the arena froze, not because he walked out alone, but because he walked out. With the United States title dragging behind him on the floor. He didn't wear it. He didn't respect it. It wasn't a symbol of his power anymore. It was an anchor. He stepped into the ring. No mic. No posing, just him. And Jacob. 2 men. 2 cousins. 2 warriors. And 1 legacy. They circled each other slowly. The lights in the arena dimmed again. Solo was the first to speak, without a mic. You think you know me? Jacob stared. You don't know what I had to become to survive, Solo hissed. Roman left. Jimmy crumbled. Jay ran. And I stayed. I held this family together when everyone else quit. You held it together, Jacob growled, by burning it from the inside. Solo stepped forward. You think you could have done better? He asked. I would have died before turning my brothers into enemies, Jacob barked back. You turned blood into bait. You let the world cheer while we ripped each other apart. And where were you? Solo shouted now. Huh? You were in other promotions. You were building your name while we fought in the trenches. You abandoned us. Jacob didn't blink. I was becoming ready. I knew one day someone would have to fix what Roman left behind. I didn't know it would be you breaking it. The silence returned. Solo slowly dropped the United States title in the center of the ring. Then he said the words no one expected. Then fix it. Jacob stepped forward, and they embraced, not a warm, smiling hug, but an emotional, clenched embrace of warriors who had finally looked each other in the eye and seen the hurt they both carried. But that moment, brief and powerful, wasn't the end. Because just as they released each other, boom! A chair shot out of nowhere. Jacob dropped. Solo turned and saw Jimmy Uso standing on the ramp, cold and furious. The crowd screamed. Chaos erupted again. Not everything was healed, and as Solo turned back to Jacob, laid out in the ring, the question returned. Was this a setup? Or was this betrayal upon betrayal? The bloodline was no longer a faction. It was a ticking time bomb, and the explosion had only just begun. The crowd had barely recovered from the shock when security scrambled into the ring. Officials poured out from backstage, trying to separate Solo Sikoa from the chaos unraveling in front of him. Jimmy USO stood at the top of the ramp, eyes locked not on Jacob Fatu, but on Solo himself. The chair in Jimmy's hand dangled loosely at his side, but the message was already carved into the very air inside the arena. This wasn't over. This wasn't peace. This was war on all fronts. Jacob Fatu was motionless on the mat. EMTs swarmed, carefully checking for a concussion or spinal damage. Solo stood rooted to the canvas, his breathing heavy, his expression unreadable. Had he expected this? Had he planned it? Or had he, like everyone else, been caught off guard by the sudden betrayal? From the ramp, Jimmy didn't blink. He didn't retreat. Instead, he slowly lifted the chair high above his head, turned it sideways, and snapped it in two across his knee. The crowd gasped. Not because of the show of strength, but because of the symbolism. Jimmy wasn't here for applause. He wasn't here for redemption. He was here to burn bridges. Backstage, chaos reigned. Paul Heyman was seen arguing with officials. He demanded answers, demanded order, but no one had control anymore, not even him. The very foundation of the bloodline had collapsed into shards, and now everyone was bleeding. Jacob Fatu was stretchered out of the ring. The audience stood in stunned silence, unsure if this was scripted, real, or somewhere dangerously in between. WWE later released an official statement. Jacob Fatu suffered a concussion and bruised ribs after an unprovoked attack by Jimmy USO. He is currently being evaluated and will miss in-ring action for an indefinite period. But fans weren't convinced. Speculation exploded across social media. Was Jimmy working alone? Was Solo still pulling the strings? Was this all part of a larger plan by Roman Reigns? Or was Jimmy sending a message not just to his cousin, but to the world? That Friday, SmackDown opened with no music, no fireworks. Just a somber Paul Heyman standing in the center of the ring, microphone in hand, the weight of years etched across his face. I have stood beside many monsters in this industry, Heyman said quietly. I have built empires with men who feared nothing and loved no one. But what I saw last week was not strength. It was desperation. It was a brother lost in the dark. He paused. The crowd watched in silence. Jimmy USO, Heyman continued, you didn't just attack Jacob Fatu. You didn't just strike your cousin. You struck the very last thread holding our family together. Then Heyman turned toward the camera and to the tribal chief. I don't know if you're watching. I don't know if you're listening. But I beg you, return. Before there's nothing left to return to. With that, he dropped the mic and walked away. The plea heard around the world. In the days that followed, WWE released a cryptic video package titled Echoes of the Bloodline. Set to haunting music, it featured clips of Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, Jimmy and Jey USO, and finally Jacob Fatu. But one moment stood out above all. A blurred image of Roman Reigns watching footage of the backstage confrontation. The message was clear, he knows. Then came the twist no one expected. 2 weeks after the attack, Jacob Fatu returned, not to the ring, not to SmackDown, but in a sit-down, black-and-white interview aired during Raw. The camera zoomed in close to Jacob's face. No music. No special effects. Just truth. When I came to WWE, Jacob began, I didn't come to be a mid-card act. I didn't come to sell t-shirts. I came because I thought I could restore something sacred. I thought I could rebuild the bloodline. He paused, but now I see, it can't be rebuilt. It can only be reborn. The interviewer leaned in. What do you mean? Jacob's eyes burned. I mean, this isn't about Solo anymore. Or Jimmy. Or Roman. This is about breaking the system that broke us. The interviewer asked, what's your next move? Jacob leaned forward. My next move is to burn everything down. And, just like that, a new fire was lit. Later that night, a backstage segment aired. Solo Sikoa pacing in his locker room. Paul Heyman entered, cautiously, holding something in his hand, Jacob Fatu's traditional Samoan beads, stained with dried blood. "He's coming for you," Heyman warned. Solo didn't respond. Heyman stepped closer. "This won't end in a handshake. You know that, right?" Still no answer. Then, slowly, Solo turned to him and whispered, "Then I'll finish it." Over the next few weeks, the war escalated. Jimmy USO was seen building his own movement, recruiting younger talent, talking in hushed tones with disgruntled superstars. He began referring to himself not as main event Jimmy USO, but as the last true heir to the bloodline. Solo Sikoa responded with destruction. He brutalized mid-carders, stormed through backstage interviews, and forced WWE officials to book him in handicap matches just so he could make a point. But it was Jacob who changed everything again. On the final SmackDown before SummerSlam, Jacob Fatu came through the crowd unannounced, interrupting a tag team main event. Chaos erupted. Chairs flew. Superstars scattered. Jacob didn't speak. He didn't pose. He simply destroyed everyone in the ring, ending with a devastating Samoan spike to Solo Sikoa himself, and then he picked up the United States title Solo had dropped months ago and threw it out of the ring. "No more titles," he shouted to the camera. "Just blood." SummerSlam was now confirmed. Jacob Fatu versus Solo Sikoa. No disqualification. No countout. No belts. Just blood. The hype was instant. WWE dubbed it the Blood War. And on the night of SummerSlam, the world watched. No entrances. No pageantry. Just two men in war paint, bare-chested, scarred, furious, meeting in the center of the ring with nothing but legacy between them. They didn't lock up. They didn't taunt. They collided. The bell rang, and what followed was less a wrestling match and more a family exorcism. Tables were smashed. Kendo sticks cracked. Chain whips lashed across backs. At one point, Jacob powerbombed Solo through the announcer's table, then turned to the camera and shouted, "This is what the bloodline looks like now." Solo fought back.